The greatest thing about Breath of the Wild was the huge opportunities for exploration it offered. We, as players, for the first time had the ability to explore Hyrule in its entirety, to go wherever we wanted. Mysteries lay around every corner. We didn't know what we would find, and that's what made it so exciting. And that is why my biggest worry for Breath of the Wild sequel has always been that they wouldn't change the world enough. Exploration is so important. That sense of discovery is so important. And so, after the recent teaser trailer at this year's E3, these worries have been in some ways validated and in other ways eradicated. We have learned that a big new part of the second game will be the addition of many floating islands in the sky, offering entirely new areas to explore. Apart from this, however, it worryingly appears that Hyrule has stayed mostly the same, at least from what we've seen. I still have hope, however, that Nintendo will find ways to make re-exploring a world we've seen before fun and exciting, and in today's video, I will go over some of the ways this could be done. Let's get to it. The first way Hyrule could be altered to make re-exploring it in Breath of the Wild sequel fun is the addition of new villages and towns, as well as the expansions of ones from the first game. As of yesterday's teaser, we have yet to see how any of the cities from the first game have changed, if at all, which gives me hope that they have been expanded upon in some way, and those changes are for now being kept secret. Adding new towns would also be a lot of fun, as it would give players an incentive to re-explore Hyrule, never knowing if they'll come across an entirely new settlement. It seems like a fair amount of time has passed since the destruction of Calamity Ganon and Ganondorf's awakening, which seems to be enough time for new settlements to be constructed in that gap. Imagine discovering a new, hidden village in the midst of Faron's jungles, where several different tree houses are connected by the boughs and branches of the enormous trees, or the restoration of a pathway to the Great Plateau, which now has upon it a new village. One of the things that disappointed me upon first playing Breath of the Wild in 2017 was the absence of underwater swimming. It had been in most, if not all of the 3D Zeldas up to that point, so the lack of it in Breath of the Wild seemed strange. Now, however, in the sequel, I believe they have the perfect opportunity to expand upon Hyrule by letting us dive beneath the waves and lakes, allowing for access to many different areas that were hidden underwater. I can just imagine diving into Lake Hylia's depths and coming across an enormous sunken temple, or discovering a network of caves and whose entrances were sunk beneath the sea. Plus, if they add on to this idea with new underwater enemies and animals, like sharks or whales or something completely original, underwater exploration would be an awesome way to revamp Hyrule. In the most recent trailer for Breath of the Wild sequel, we witnessed a scene where Link battles a huge worm-like enemy in an environment reminiscent of a cave or dungeon. Furthermore, the first teaser was set entirely underground, other than the last shot, with our heroes coming across a mysterious corpse. As you can imagine, myself and many others took this to mean that the focus of the sequel may be many new areas and caves to explore underneath Hyrule's surface, perhaps even a whole new world hidden underground. The most recent trailer, however, somewhat dashed these hopes, instead focusing on above Hyrule on sky exploration. Whilst this does suggest that maybe caves and underground exploration won't play as major a role in the game as we thought, I still think it's very likely that Nintendo could add many hidden branching cave networks under Hyrule's surface, making re-exploring it even more enjoyable. In fact, it does seem possible that we will be able to venture inside of the great hole that was left in the ground where Hyrule Castle once was found, but then it rose into the sky, of course. Plus, if you combine it with the idea of underwater exploration, the possibilities for discovery become all the more exciting and expansive. Another way Hyrule could be spiced up is the addition of new mini-bosses to fight. In the trailer we saw recently at E3, this idea was semi-confirmed when they showed a stone talus with a bokoblin encampment built atop it. Whilst this was really cool, and it's great to see them expanding on ideas from the first game, I would also love to see some brand new mini-bosses, which would completely shock people on their first playthrough of the game. Imagine that Ganondorf's malice has spawned many new abominations throughout the kingdom, perhaps being inspired by the early Guardian designs. The addition of these new mini-bosses to fight would help to add to the slight horror factor it seems the sequel is going for, and would add new opportunities for both combat and exploration and adventure. Okay, this one may sound a little vague, so allow me to explain. In the first game, there were times when something unique may randomly happen to you when exploring Hyrule. For example, you may become ambushed by a Yiga spy who poses as a harmless civilian, or you may witness a shooting star falling to the ground. Just like this, I think it would be awesome to see new, random and surprising world events occur in the sequel. Perhaps the ground may suddenly begin to shake, and you'll witness an earthquake tearing it apart, caused by the rising of Hyrule Castle from the ground. Or maybe a strange new enemy or character will fall to the ground from the new Sky Islands, giving you a shock and a new enemy to fight. The possibilities of little events like these are almost endless, and I really hope Nintendo capitalizes on the potential they have here. I say shrines in air quotes, as we know that they, along with all the other Sheikah technology from the first game like the Divine Beasts and Towers, have seemingly vanished from the face of Hyrule. So, in their place, I think it would be awesome if there were introduced a series of new mini-dungeons with a differing aesthetic and different things to do inside. Perhaps these could be ancient Zonai temples that have risen from the depths in response to the floating islands appearing, which also serve the unique purpose of allowing travel to the floating islands when completed. Furthermore, the puzzles and challenges inside could involve Link using his new, energy-infused hand, similar to how the Sheikah Slate and its runes were used for shrines in the first game. Specifically, if something like shrines were to appear in the sequel, I would prefer if they were less present, but the ones which are there are much longer and much more varying in both aesthetics and puzzles, with blessing shrines being eradicated entirely. This is a really simple one. I'd love to see new enemies replace some of the ones such as the Bokoblins and Moblins that were in too high abundance in the first game's Hyrule. I do still think they should return, however, and we know they do from the trailer, but I just think that there should be less of them. Perhaps new, otherworldly and terrifying monsters have crept out onto the surface from the huge gap left in the ground where Hyrule Castle once stood. Some of these could even be enemies returning from previous games, such as Skulltulas, Redeads or Darknuts, to add a much needed horror flair to the game. Next, I think it would be great to see some new animals, both aggressive and unaggressive, be added to Hyrule. This one admittedly doesn't make much sense, as it raises questions as to where exactly these creatures came from. To be honest though, I'd rather that these creatures are added with no explanation than if they weren't added at all. On top of this, to make the world feel even more alive, it would be fantastic if new plants and ingredients were added to incentivize adventure to places you've been before. They could even be used in many new crafting recipes for different foods and dishes. Plus, if you tie in these new ingredients to a possible revamped and upgraded crafting system, this idea gets even cooler and way more expansive. Admittedly, this is a bit of a weird one, but I think it would be cool if they shuffled some parts of the map around a bit to make exploration unpredictable and even disorientating for players who know the first map off by heart. Imagine that the rising of Hyrule's castle caused a surge in tectonic activity so great that it caused different regions to swap places with each other, such as the Gerudo Desert now being pushed to the northern regions of Hyrule as one example. I am in no way expecting this, and from the trailer, it appears that at least most of Hyrule is in the same positions, but even so, I would love to see Nintendo mess around a bit with the layout of the world. As shown by this video, I believe that there are many different ways that re-exploring the same Hyrule from Breath of the Wild, or a similar one I mean, could be made enjoyable, surprising and addicting, and I really hope that Nintendo capitalizes on at least a few of them. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.